Welcome everybody to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. And as you know, I talk about 4 different types of freedom: time, financial, location, health freedom. And in that light, I'm always bringing on guests, entrepreneurs, doing things on the cutting edge, shaping the world, changing lives. So today we have Victor Manzo. He's a business mindset coach, and to give him some accolades, he's the top guest on Podmatch, so definitely check out that platform. But today is going to be all about mindset. It's going to be talking about decoding the matrix, rewiring the brain, effortless success. So Victor, welcome.
Thanks for having me, brother. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we connected on Podmatch, and your bio is really interesting. You talk about mindset and rewiring the brain. We're going to talk about the doing trap. So let's get into it. Tell us more about yourself, how you got started, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, my journey all started. I've been a chiropractor for 12 years now, and that was my first journey. Got into that realm, and about 5 years in, I hit my financial peak and all these other things, and all of a sudden I was burned out, every 4 to 6 months. I was unfulfilled when I got to that point, unsatisfied. And my wife worked in the office with me, and I remember talking to her going, I don't know if I want to continue this. This is always an uphill battle. And I feel like there's something different, and I just don't know. It just doesn't feel right. Now, a little backstory, I used to be, as I was studying chiropractic, I studied a lot of energy healing, energy medicine techniques. And in that journey, I learned a lot about quantum physics and consciousness. I learned a lot about understanding like spirituality, ancient wisdom stuff, and different aspects of energy and how it plays a role in our lives with universal laws and so forth. So at this point in my life, I'm like, you know what? I know that if I'm the creator of my life, I can dictate what success means, and I should be able to experience that in some way, shape, or form. And so I started to stop reading 80 to 120 books a year. I stopped listening to a gazillion podcasts. I mean, I just was listening and downloading because, business world says knowledge is power, more knowledge, more money, more success, this and that. Self-help and personal development says the same thing. So I was just like doing that for the last 5, 6 years, 7 years. And I was like, something's got to give, something's got to change. And when I started to step into this new aspect, first off, I changed my practice around where I took a 40% hit financially because it wasn't what I really wanted. So the patients in my office that didn't align with what we were going towards, we just refer them to other chiropractors that can, to continue their care. And then we started to, I wanted to focus more on pediatrics. That was my passion and what I wanted to really get into. And taking all these principles that I talk about now, that's what was the premise of my work, because I didn't do anything different, did anything new. I didn't do any new marketing strategy. I didn't do nothing in the essence. All I did was just focus on what I wanted to create, focused on my energy and all the things that I talk about, which we'll get in today a little bit of. And all of a sudden I grew, in a little over a year, the practice was back at its financial peak. I was working over 50% less than what I was doing before, and way less stressed. And my pediatric office went from 5% patient volume to 48% in that journey. So from that experience, I said, you know what? Entrepreneurs need to learn this stuff because there's just so much doing. There's so much always looking outside ourselves, giving our power away. It's just not entrepreneurs. Individuals do this too. And I'm like, they're always exhausted. They're doing so much, and yet they're not achieving the levels of what they want. What if we can do it differently? I did it. Why can't I teach that? And so I started it as like a little side hustle 3.5 years ago almost. And this year I went full time, and that's how I made that transition to be going into business coaching and so forth.
Yeah, that's a very inspiring story. A lot of healthcare professionals experience the same thing, and kudos to you for taking action and making the proper changes. What do you think? What's interesting is people are always like, oh, I can't fire my client. I can't do this. It's gonna hit my revenue. But what made you? What do you think was the cause? When you started aligning or starting to say no to the things that were taking away from you that contributed to your growth and your success?
There came a point where it was just, you got to be authentic with yourself. That's one of the true things that, I had a coach back then who was like, just meet people where they are with their health. And, that's what it's all about, is just helping them, elevate themselves to higher levels if they want to go there, but you meet them where they are instead of you saying how it should be. And that just never sat well with me, but this coach was extremely successful. So I figured, she's doing something right. I'm just going to listen to what she says. And there came a point though where that's what led a lot of burnout, because I had a lot of incongruence with that. It was always stressing me where, here's what I recommend for you. But then yet they would be like, I can only do this. And I'd be like, okay, well then we'll meet you there. But here's this and that. And then, all this other stuff. And I thought about it for a second. I'm like, if you go to a master in martial arts, let's say Kung Fu or, Aikido or Hapkido, whatever it is, and they tell you, I want to master this. What do I need to do? They're going to they'll tell you what it is. And if you say, you know what? That sounds great. But what if I just do this instead? They're going to look and say, no, it's either this or you go. I know the path to help you. And it's the same thing in my practice. It's not that it's my way or the highway. A lot of people take it that way. And I'm like, it wasn't that. I'm a result-driven guy. So I want to see results. I want to see my patients get better. That's what matters most to me. And so that's why I do what I do. I love seeing that transition when they come in, and then after a certain period of time with the scans and technology we use to see the transition to get to that point. What was I getting tired of is that people sometimes would get better and then sometimes they weren't. Like things would track back because we didn't do enough work in the beginning. And that would frustrate me, especially when they'd said, chiropractic doesn't work. Because then I realized not only am I not sticking to what my truths matter to me and when I know I can help the individual, but also it's hurting chiropractic. Because now if they get to a certain point and they go, chiropractic, it doesn't work. And really what they needed was just more frequency and care to help in the beginning phases of things to really make that change and alter the neurology and rewiring the brain, neuroplasticity, all that fun stuff. And so that's what was my principle, and that's what mattered most to me. And so when I started to align to what mattered most to me, I didn't care about a profit loss here or there because I knew it was going to come back. It's just laws, universal laws. It's the energy. That's just when you do stuff that's really, really authentic to you and really what matters to you and what you value the most. That's what I call a generator to your energy, because your emotions are going to be evolved, but it's a higher emotion. You're more passionate about it. You have more bliss, more excitement. You have compassion, all these different things. These are high vibes when it comes to, or higher consciousness levels of emotions. And when you do those kind of things, you're going to generate. This is where inspiration comes from. You don't need to be motivated to go to work. You're going to be inspired to go. You're going to be inspired to run your business. You're going to be inspired to do those things. And this makes manifesting your vision or your dream or a goal or whatever it is you would desire a lot easier. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, but it's a lot easier than what the path you're on already. Yeah,
it's almost like I've been reading a lot on energy alignment and sort of manifesting. And it's really, it's kind of the same concepts that you're talking about. Is you just you go in line. It's like the trend. It's like, the market. You go with the trend. The trend's your friend. So you go against that, then you're running downhill. So yeah, that's a really interesting insight. One thing is talking about the matrix, and when you talk about decoding the matrix, what do you mean by that? I find that fascinating.
Yeah, so let's break down what the matrix is first, so we can all understand what that is. And so the matrix, the other term for matrix is human collective consciousness. Now, some may say, what the heck's a human collective consciousness? Every single human in the world has a consciousness level where they're at. When we average all those out, that becomes the matrix or the human collective consciousness of the world. Now, humans have a matrix, but every species in the world has matrix. The Earth has one, the solar system has it, the galaxies have it, the universe have it. The matrix is not good or bad. It just is. It's just the average of all the human. We'll go to humanity's sake. It's all just the average of consciousness levels of each human that exists in this world. Now, decoding or breaking it down, well, first we have to understand, what makes up the matrix then? Well, there's all the sub-matrices. They're continents, they're states, they're countries, they're states, they're cities, towns, and it comes all the way down to you, me, and all the listeners, right? That we make up the matrix. And to decode it is understanding how the matrix plays a role on our life, plays a role on our mind. It conditions us. From age 0 to 7, that's when our mind is the most impressionable to what we take as truth. And whatever is showing up in our life there, we think after 7, the brain thinks this is the world. We've been for the first 7 years. Here we go. This is life. And the matrix has a part of that, because where is the consciousness levels of where you're coming from, where you're developing it, what's your community like, your parents or friends, how are they influenced, right? So this all plays a role and continues on. And a lot of times people get stuck in a trap thinking, well, this is just the way it is, or this is how my life is, or this is just how it is, or this is who I am. And that's a trap, because you can always transcend out of it in some way, shape, or form. And the easiest way to do that is just by setting your intention every day. Because the matrix, like I said, it's not good or bad, it just is. If you don't set your intention, you're going to be pulled down to or pulled to that average all the time. because you've heard this before. Many people have the law of association. You average the 5 closest people to you, that's you. Or if you average the incomes of the 5 closest people to you, that's your income. Well, that's the law of association. Well, the law of association all works in this way too, where it's always going to pull you to the main vibe where everything is. But if you're intentional on what you do every single day, you can step out of that and not be influenced by that. And in the book, I talk my recent book about this. I share how, when COVID hit, there was the pandemic going on and small businesses were closing down, they were struggling and all these other things. Well, that's true in that one realm, but those who are out of the matrix saw different. Now you look at billionaires, I share this in the book, 56% of their net worth in those almost 2 years grew, 56%. Now, how is it that they grew 56% when supposedly all the small businesses and so forth were suffering like crazy? Businesses were suffering because of this. It's the same concept of looking at when you step out in the code matrix and understand it. Like when the Great Depression happened, there was a lot of millionaires that were made in the Great Depression. I'm not saying there wasn't people that suffered, but I'm just saying that there was also the other spectrum of it. And so why does it work for one and not for the other? That's where the matrix plays a big role in that.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's always downturns, and really it's time to slow down, reassess. You can actually get a lot more done during bear markets, and because up markets everybody's hype and greed and FOMO and all of that. So, but then the best success is made in times such as what we're in now. The other thing is one thing is you have this idea of this have, do, be trap. What does that mean?
Yeah, I learned this in chiropractic school, and it was one of those things where I was just fascinated when I first learned it, because I was like, oh my God, I say that. Oh my God, everyone I know says this. And that is, you've heard this before. If I have this, then I can do this and I'll be this person. If I just win the lottery, then I can do these things and I can be that person. If I just had more new patients, or if I just had more of this, then I can do. We've all said it. I'm very transparent. So I'm not a kind of coach who's gonna be like, oh, I never say that, I master that. I'm human. It happens. Anyone that says they don't do this anymore, you can question it, because we're all human. We have those moments. I'll catch myself be going, oh man, I'm in that have do thing. Let me step back. And so the reason why that's a trap is because that's not how the universe works and world works. I mean, remember, the quantum world, just understand, is the invisible world that is what creates our physical world. And so it's a deeper level of understanding our world more and how we create it in the physical realm. And so everything is vibration. Everything is energy. Everything's a frequency. This is not new. It seems like new, but Nikola Tesla said this back in 1900. That if we start to look at the universe in the terms of energy, frequency, and vibration, what humans can do in 1 year, they'll expand. They'll be more than what they've done in the last 10. Now, I'm paraphrasing that last part, but it's the point of understanding. So when you understand that everything is a vibration, everything's a frequency, everyth's a consciousness level, then the have, do, be is backwards. You can't have something unless you've been the being part first. And the doing is you're coming from that vibe. So that's the trap, the thinking, one day when I have this, one day when this happens, when I have this, when I get to this level. We've all said it in business. I know we have in some way, shape, or form. And so that's why it's such a trap, because you're going against the grain. It's kind of like, I don't know, you're trying to swim upstream a very raging river. You're going to the Colorado River, right? It's a level 5. And you're like, don't matter, I'm going to swim up that current. Yeah, good luck with that. It's never going to happen. I don't care how strong of a swimmer you are. I don't care. Some people say, well, I'll put jets on. No. You can't cheat it. It's just you in the water, and that's it. Not even flippers on your feet. So that's kind of what you're doing to yourself. And the essence of the way the be, do, have, the way the model, what I learned, is that it relates to universal laws. It relates with what quantum physics talks about, is that you have to be at that vibration first. That's the being element. Once you do that, we're all magnets walking around, because once you're being, then all of a sudden ideas, circumstance, situations, or stuff that's going to come to you is going to actually propel you to law of inspire action, which means doing, because you're going to be propelled and inspired to do something. And then from there, you will have what it is you desire, because you came from the being first. Mm-hmm. And that's the principle of the whole entire model. It's a different way of doing things. In business, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and the thing about business is they think that, I'm losing my train of thought here, but it was the doing. But it's one of those things that we have to do, and we always have to be thinking in the next step, and we always have to be this and this and this. But really, that's not how you have to be. I'm not saying doing that doesn't work, but there's a cost to that. the stuff I'm talking about doesn't have a cost to it. Because if I'm saying, hey, guess what, Doc? All you have to do is just get your vibe right, get to that consciousness level. And then the idea that you want to have that 7-figure business, 8-figure, 9-figure, that idea or the people, the partnerships, the circumstance, those situations, they will come to you. And I promise you, if you learn how to get out of your mind and tap into the body using different certain things to gauge that, then all of a sudden you'll know when it's time to do that. Like law of inspired action for me, I get anxious. I don't get anxious. I don't normally do. But when something's coming up, if it's an idea or something I take action to, or when I was writing all my books that I've ever written, it was always that like I had this anxiousness. It wouldn't leave me alone. It just kept pressing and pressing. I'm like, why is these thoughts coming to me? And then I get anxious about it. I'm going, all right, I've been here before. This must mean I need to take action on something. I'm aligned to something. And then I just continue. And then all of a sudden I take the action, and then the anxiousness goes away. And I'm like, all right, I did what I had to do. And, it's just one of those things I don't have to think. Or when an idea comes, I could just be sitting here having in a podcast, and I'll share something. And I'm like, that's my next idea. Oh my goodness, I got to act on that. And certain things like that. It'll just come to me rather than me trying to figure all these things out.
Yeah. What are some resources? Because, what you're talking about is resonates with a lot of individuals, and they want to check out books. I know you wrote a book, which I encourage the listeners and audience to check out, and to help us along the way.
Yeah, I think there's 2 great books besides my books. I wouldn't be a good author if I didn't do that. But I think there's 2 books I talk about often in my books that I think they were very pivotal for me. And it's just for you to frame your mind to understand a little bit of what this consciousness level is and how it has a role and effect on things. So there's one book called Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins. It's a phenomenal book. He's done 20, 30 years almost of research where he's tested out what consciousness levels are with religions to continents to, where humanity is. He's mapped out, the avatars of our world, like Jesus, Krishna, and Buddha. And you just understand how there's different levels of consciousness, how to raise out of our certain consciousness level to experience more and help humanity in the process. The second book I love, it's more of it's the science behind vibration and understanding how vibration changes things. And it's called The Hidden Messages of Water by Dr. Masaru Emoto. And what he did in his studies is they would take water and they would say, I love you, and just the essence of love. And then they would flash freeze it and look at what the structure of that water was. And you'll see it was in a beautiful hex form, which means that's usually a higher vibrational frequency. That means our body absorbs it more, utilizes it more. But it also had crystallization all at the end of them too, which is high vibration. And then they done it with hate, and all of a sudden you go freeze the water and you look and it's all scattered, not really a lot of structure there. And they've done this study in so many different ways, but he did something very similar to what Power versus Force did. Instead of, doing it the way he tested things, he did it through water, religion, music, concepts, emotions, ideas. Now, why is that critical? Because once you start to understand these 2 things in just these 2 books alone, now you start to understand the quantum world a little better. You start to understand how our thoughts can actually play an effect on the material world and what it's vibrating at and so forth. And for me at least, it was the opening the door to all the stuff I knew before on spirituality and quantum physics and universal laws and all that. And it kind of just opened the door wide where I was like, all right, this is some deep stuff here that can really help us see things so drastically and start to understand and have some science under the quantum. Because when you talk about like effortless success in the business world, I can't tell you how many times people look at me and say, oh, that's crazy. All it is work and grind and hustle. And I'm like, yeah, that's what you've been told. I know, because I've been down that path. And I'm like, there's a whole different world to it. And these are things that I pull towards. It's scientific. And they've done it in very scientific measures. And it's one of those things that, like science, right? You test something, you get a result, you keep testing, you get the same result, keep testing. Eventually you're like, okay, there's a pattern here that this is what it's showing. And they've done it so powerfully even too, where they've done it with plants and using words and thoughts and all that, but that's a whole nother conversation. But those 2 books is the ones I recommend the most.
Yeah. And lastly, how do people contact you? You're on social media. I know you have a YouTube channel, and how can they, reach out to you?
My hub is my website. So empoweryourreality.com. That's where you can find everything. If this resonates with you and you're looking for how to learn more about this and create this more in your life and help achieve your dream life more and so forth, I do a free discovery call. I have a free ebook on the power of visualization where I dive deep into how the mind can literally change and change physical matter. I talk about a couple different studies that were done. And then social media, bottom left of my corner of my website. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. I do have a YouTube channel also. But reach out. Any questions you may have about stuff I'm sharing and so forth. I love hearing from people.
Yeah. And for all the audience and listeners out there, Victor's sources will be in the links and show notes. Be sure to check out his socials and website, his book as well. Thanks so much for coming onto the podcast. It was a really great discussion. I love these ideas, just more, getting rid of all the noise and, distilling it down to the essence. So thanks so much. And we look forward to having you on future episodes.
Thanks for having me, brother. This was fun.